We had an exponential growth during COVID. It turned out that it was our best years of our whole transcargo history. People compare you by price because the only piece of information that they have from you, they got nothing else but your rate. If you specialize on something, you will be the obvious choice no matter what.
It's more about going deeper than going wider. And
Freight forwarders don't really pay attention to content, but it sells your lead even before the call. If I find zero information about you, the credibility went from this to this in seconds. If the competitive advantage that you are trying to sell me on is price, the only thing you're gonna be judged is by price.
Jose, so welcome to the Forward Thinking podcast. I really appreciate you joining me all the way from Miami.
My pleasure.
Now, we've been connected for some time on LinkedIn, and I've followed your content and really enjoyed your content. And I know we've sort of interacted online, which is great. And yeah, first time for us sort of meeting virtually. So again, thank you very much. I thought that we could just run over your background, and I can see you've been in freight and logistics for quite a while. So what is your background and how did you end up in freight forwarding?
It goes back to when I was 18 years old, graduated from high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My mom always tells the story that I wanted to be a doctor, and it's true, I did want to, but not for long. I found myself in a position where I really didn't want, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then she had this company that had been already for going for about 3 to 4 years. And, it was like the common thing to do just because my mom was the owner. So I was supposed to be there. But
Yeah.
it wasn't really something that I looked forward to doing. And at the time, when my mom opened All Transcargo, which was like back in 2007, I was still in Ecuador. And she opened the Miami office, which is our headquarters. And then she opened the Ecuadorian office, which is our second oldest location. And then I started working there in Ecuador when I was 18 years
Ah.
old. She asked me to come here to the States to help her out, but I just couldn't wrap my head around coming here because, my family, my friends, my grandmother, which is the one that raised me pretty much, my whole life was there. So it was
Yeah.
a decision that took me about 2 years to finally just say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go help you out. So when I was 20, I remember, so mind you, when I was 20, it was like a 2-year period where I came multiple times here and then I went back to Ecuador. So she was pretty disappointed that I never stayed, always go back to Ecuador. So I remember calling her one day and telling her, hey, I'm going now and I'm gonna go and stay. And it's funny because she didn't believe me. So she bought a round trip ticket for me to come to the US, but then come back a few months later. But I never went back.
You
And
stayed.
it was tough.
What was there any catalyst or anything that finally made you go, okay, now this is the time I'm gonna definitely stay this time? Was there anything specific?
Looking back, I think about that moment. Maybe I was at a point in my life. I was 19 years old, so it's not like I was like 30 or 40 where my
Yeah.
life passed already. And I was like so mature that I took the decision at all. But it was
Yeah.
just something that came to my head one day. And I said, why not? And then I remember me working there in Ecuador, which is, at the end of the day, it's a developing country. It's not like nothing like the US. And I remember one day at lunchtime looking at all the people that would go at certain place to have lunch that would work in corporate offices around the area. And I remember looking at them and asking myself, do I want to be here forever? And then I said, no, I don't. So let's just go there and see what happens. So that's pretty much how it.
That's a really cool story. And I know you mentioned, so your mum started the business around 2007. How do you find that dynamic of working in a family business and, all the, I guess, the fun and the challenges that come along with it?
It's tough. It's difficult. Actually, I follow a few guys from Australia. Australia, actually, we have common connections. A couple of guys that are in family business, like logistics family business. And I know they relate when I tell my stories. I know they relate with me on a deeper level because it's really hard because you have your mother or your father, wherever, but also it's your employer. And you have stuff at home that you bring to work, and then you got stuff at work that you bring back home. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to like draw a line and say, right now we are mother and son, or right now we are employer employee. So it's
Mm.
a very tough thing to do. And I want to say that it took us a few years to like find a way for us to like interact being all and nothing at the same time. So it's hard, but
Yeah.
it's possible. It's possible. So if you're in my position, if you're on your early 20s, there's hope. You just got to be patient.
So, yeah, you're living proof. And I find that, and I've sort of got experience as well running Logihire with my wife, and having worked with her in the previous business. And it's hard, I think, initially to have that separation, right, between home life and work life, and whatever's going on at home, you have to just leave it at home. You come into the office, you've got your employees, you've got your clients, everything. It's hard, easier said than done, but it's one of those ones where you kind of learn, I think, over time to separate the two and move forward.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. In general, how is, I guess, the freight forwarding and the logistics market over there in the US, and kind of how has it been, I guess, the last couple of years in particular?
So I would say we had an exponential growth during COVID, which was ironic because no one knew what was going to happen 2020, 2021. Like we
Yeah.
weren't like not knowing what was going to happen, but it turned out that it was like our best years of our whole oil transcargo history.
Mm.
And we grew so much that we had to hire a bigger team to, handle all the shipments. So I would say from there on, like it never went back to our call it average levels pre-COVID. It
Yeah.
had obviously a peak and then it dropped a little bit. But I would say over the last years, sometimes we feel that COVID was like a couple of years ago. But if you think about it, it was 6 years ago. Like in a couple of months, it's going to be
Crazy.
6 years. It is
Yeah.
crazy. So I would say, other than that, like COVID was good to freight forwarders. I mean, the ones that knew how to capitalize it or that had the money or the capital to like invest in like freight or like shipments because they saw the return of that investment like big time, right?
Yeah.
So I would say other than that, after COVID, everything is because I work with Latin America a lot as well. So I would say like in general, it's pretty much the same everywhere. Logistics, you always have logistical problems or space problems or problems with the shipper or with the trucking company that never get to the loading spot on time. It is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And one thing that I would say about the US market is that people compare you by price, and that is something that I talk about a lot in my content. But it
Mm.
is true. People compare you by price. But if you go deeper, and I know we're not touching on sales yet, but if you go deeper into the matter, they compare you by price because the only piece of information that they have from you. They got nothing else but your rate. So obviously, the most natural thing that will happen is that they will compare you by price.
Yeah. No, that's very true. We'll definitely touch on that, the sales side of things, soon as well. Have you seen much impact for you guys in terms of, I guess, global trade policy, whether it's the tariffs or just the political or geopolitical market? There's been a lot of stuff happening in the world over the last couple of years, and I guess freight is one of those things where no 2 days are the same, right? But how has that impacted you guys, if much at all?
So there's two things that are happening, especially here in the U.S., especially last year and this year. First, the tariffs with China and the whole back and forth with the percentages and stuff. And I would say, on and all, we were able to I wouldn't say capitalize on it because it was in some cases it was unfortunate for some like consignees here that they had to like pay way more than they were expected. For
Mm.
example, they were supposed to, I don't know, to give you a rough number, maybe $1,000 of duties, and they ended up paying sometimes like 10, 15,000. Obviously, all the margins that you had vanishes when that
Yeah.
happened. But I would say having a good customs department goes a long way, especially when something like this happen, that the tariffs are changing day by day. Having a pretty much 24/7 person in your team that
Mm,
allows you to give real-time information to your client saying, hey, if you ship this month, it might cost you this, but we don't really know right now, right? But you can go up to this, so you at least you know that you have a range to play with. So
yeah.
I would say that's one thing that happened last year, and then this year, with pretty sure you heard about the Venezuela thing happening with the U.S. and stuff. Obviously, nothing is like really set yet or like said and done yet, but the opportunity that can come from what happened is huge because
Mm,
as you know, Venezuela is like very rich in the oil and gas industry. So we expect to have like a lot of business with Venezuela. So
mm.
if you're reporting happening right now, you have to take a look at what's happening in Venezuela because maybe you got something that you can do with that country because there's a lot of things that will soon, very soon, start happening with them.
Yeah, that's great. And good for you guys, right? Because you've been embedded in that South American market and Central America for so long. So no doubt there'll be some opportunities there down the track. What's your thoughts on like some of the consolidation that's happened in the market, right? We've seen, I think over the last couple of years, especially the big one, obviously DSV and Schenker, which kind of all went official on January the 1st. You had Siva and Bolloré not too long ago. So seems like the market just keeps on consolidating and the bigger keep getting bigger. But what's your thoughts on that for smaller to mid-tier players when this keeps happening?
That's a great question. And I was talking to someone about this a few days ago. And this will just keep happening. The bigger guys will just keep acquiring the smaller guys. But I would say anything that's happened, right, with Ham Pursuit a few years ago and Maersk and things that has happened in the past and will
Mm,
continue happening. But I would say though that like the big guys or the bigger guys will win with the stability and maybe spaces, and that's something that won't change, right? Having good contacts, it's something that if you're not too big, if you're a small, medium sized forwarder, obviously something that you always gotta have good contacts.
yeah,
I would say the smaller forwarders or the smaller players will win by adaptability. So being willing to adapt to new things happening in the market, but the caveat here is that if you specialize on something, this is key here, and this will be key in this conversation. If you specialize on something, on a commodity, on a trade lane, or in something in particular, you will be the obvious choice no matter what. Because if, for example, in your case, Logi Hire, you are a recruitment company for freight forwarders or for logistics company. If I get I don't know, 10 emails of recruitment firms or recruitment companies pitching me their services, and I'm a freight forwarder, and you are one of them, guess which one I would want to talk to? You, because you work with people like myself. You understand my problems, you know how to solve them, you know what keeps me up at night. So, with that in mind, or with that idea, I would say if the bigger guys will keep acquiring the smaller ones, but if you have something that you are specialize on, you will keep winning no matter what.
interesting. That's a really good point. So it's for the smaller guys, I guess it's more about going deeper than going wider and looking at that niche and really honing in on it. And that can be your differentiator, right? Compared to some, because the big ones pretty much do everything and are kind of generalists. So that could be a bit of a differentiator there. Interesting. And that will kind of lead me on to the next point because, like I said, I've been following your content for a while and you put out really, really good stuff, especially around sales, marketing, and just what forwarders are doing and even not doing, right? And some of the mistakes they're making, which looks like you recently set up a new business to really focus in on that, given your experience and your background, obviously day to day, kind of on the front lines. Can you tell us about, yeah, your new business that you've set up and why you thought now was the right time to launch this?
Okay, so this is a funny story because I never thought it was gonna be like a new business or a new thing that I was gonna do, and it took me about a year to actually tell my mom, and my mom, which is my employer, also my boss, right? I told her a couple of months ago. I told her, hey, I'm doing this, and she's like, well, like when all this happened, I told her, well, I never really knew that this was gonna become a thing. I just started sharing what I was doing for us at All Trans Cargo, and that kind of happens like on its own. But basically, for IQ, which is my new project. I don't want to call it like a lead gen agency because that puts me on a lead gen box. I'm not like a lead gen
Sure.
because it goes like deeper further than that. But basically, I saw that our industry in general, and I'm sure you agree with this, that we operate like we live in the past. Like the website, the content, the way to offer, the way to sell the service, it's just something that needs to change, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not the messiah of logistics, right? I'm not the one that is gonna just gonna offer something new because this is not really new. Maybe new to logistics, but not really new. I don't know if you heard about Alex Ramosi, but that guy,
Yeah.
you know, he's been talking about this like forever. And
Yeah.
I would say like a realization of mine that I had 2 years ago was consuming his content and then coming to one of his workshops in Las Vegas 2 years ago. And it opened my eyes to so many possible ways to grow our business at Alltrans, like so many ways. And if you think about it, there's multiple channels that you can obviously use: cold email, content, LinkedIn, cold calling, ads, YouTube videos, a lot of things that you can do. But freight forwarders are like still trying to keep repeating the same things that it's proven that they don't work, but they just keep doing.
Yeah.
So I saw that that needed to be changed. So I started doing this, which is cold email and LinkedIn to generate new conversations for our company about trans. Actually,
Yeah.
I do myself and also on my mom's profile, putting out content for about 14 to 15 months now. And at the beginning, it was crickets. Like no one knew what I was talking about. Like no one interacting with my posts. Like maybe a
Yeah.
few likes from people like from here, Miami, like my mom, and maybe there's the guy
Yeah.
I never forget him
Friends and
because
family.
yeah. So these guys,
Yeah.
like I bought like a insurance policy. So
Yeah.
maybe I don't know, as a way of saying thank you, he would
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
interacting with my posts. So that's kind
Yeah.
of the way that it started about 14 months ago. And the results that we now see after 14 months are just unbelievable. It's just too
Mm.
crazy. It's just crazy because it's like a snowball. It just compounds over time. Like going back to the point, Forward IQ, it's a company that helps freight forwarders gets new conversations every month via cold email and LinkedIn. Why did I pick these two platforms? Because there's many, just like I said.
Mm.
Because we all send emails, right? Freight forwarders send emails all day, every day. Just you just have to go into your junk folder and you'll find hundreds of emails that never landed in your inbox, right? So we all send emails. And LinkedIn, there's a crazy statistic that I read about a couple of days ago. 80% of B2B leads are found on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, it's the platform. Everybody that sells B2B, like you, me, freight forwarders, have to be on. Like they must be on.
Yeah.
So when you combine them both, you know, content and then cold email. So because what happens is you receive an email, right? An email that it wasn't that bad, right? It was not the copy and paste template that every other forwarder uses. So it was something that caught your attention. What is the first thing that you do when something interests you in some way?
Mm.
You go online and then you look either that person
Look
up
them
or
up.
you look the
Yeah.
company up. So if you, for example, if you receive an email of Jose at Forward IQ, wherever, and then you look me up online, you're gonna find me on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Instagram. And if you go to my LinkedIn page, you will see my profile, and it's like a landing page. In a few seconds, you'll know what I do, how I can help you, if I can help you, and the most obvious choice for you if you're a freight forwarder struggling to get new conversations every month, right?
Yeah.
Or struggling to use email and LinkedIn to generate more leads and sales. I am your guy just because I position myself for conversion. So the thing that happens with freight forwarders, like I was saying, if I receive an email that it was good enough that I took the time to look you up online and I find nothing, if I find zero information about you, the credibility went from this to this in seconds. So free forwarders don't really pay attention to content, but the power of it or that it has for conversion, trust, and credibility, It's something that sells your lead even before the call.
Yeah. And I'll back up what you said, right, about the fact that particularly within freight forwarding, there's a lot of operators out there that have had businesses and largely pretty successful businesses, right, with really minimal online branding presence. Where, in the early 2000s and even the mid 2000s, you could kind of get away with that, right? You didn't necessarily need a shiny website and to be on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But I think things are different now. And I'll give you an example. Like I recently went out and saw a potential client not too long ago. They only got a website last year, right? They, I think, have been around for over 20 years at this point. They're doing over like 50 million in revenue, like successful company, right? But had no brand, nothing. And I sort of went in there to really talk about, okay, how do we generate new sales? What does that actually look like? Because there was no sales function in the company. I think had relied on word of mouth and repeat business for the last 20 odd years. But it's 2026, right? And things are starting to change. And like you, to your point, if customers see people like you constantly posting relevant content, by the time they actually need someone with your services, you're the first thought. Like you're that trusted thought leader where they go, oh yeah, I know that guy, Jose. I know what he does, right? And so I think now it's starting to shift, but people are trying to catch up, right? And I think in this industry where people have done the same thing for so long, it's a bit of a challenge for people. So I think someone like you, where you can come in and literally sit down and kind of show them, okay, this is what I do and it works, and you're sort of proof of that, right? That's a really great model. And you've found big success. Like 14 months, 15 months is nothing, right? In the grand scheme, like it's hardly any time at all. And you've already found really big success.
Yeah, 100%. And in so many ways, like just to give you a few examples, right now we've worked with over 5 orders in the last 8 months or so, like for 4IQ, and then for All Trans Cargo, which is our freight forwarding company. The leads that my boss, which is my mom, she gets on the DMs are just crazy, just
Yeah.
crazy. Like when Venezuela opened up, or what Venezuela thing happened a couple of weeks ago, she got like 10 DMs saying, "You guys are in Venezuela, right? Like I might have something with you, like you guys in like a few weeks. Like let's see what happens, but
Mm.
definitely I'm gonna do it with you guys, like 100%." Or
Wow.
like we share, like she travels around the world like all year round, and she's going to Dubai this Friday and starting like a big route of conferences. And then we posted that she's gonna go there, and there's today, like literally, I'm not lying to you, 3 forwarders sent her a message saying, "Hey, you're gonna be at Dubai. I would love for you to visit our offices during your time there." And that is something that, if you think about it, obviously there is, the time and the resources that takes for us to put everything that's happening. Because the thing here is, foreigners sometimes think, yeah, but I don't have anything to tell. That's a lie.
Mm.
We all got a story to tell, and we all got like funny stories in logistics, or with clients, or with leads, or with like team that are happening in a day-to-day basis. We just have to put them online. That's it. But coming back to the point, the thing here is that posting content, if you think about, if you compare it with ad, for example, it cost us $0 to put content. And the amount of leads that now we get after 14 months of just being patient enough to wait until it clicks, or like we started being more noticeable, are just exponentially higher, like you said, like than the time that it took us for it to work. So I would say there's a big opportunity there. And when I'm on discovery calls with forwarders, I tell them, hey, even if we don't work together, just go on YouTube and just look up how LinkedIn works and start putting content, because
Yeah.
you're gonna be so thankful that you started today, a year from now, because like I said, content just compounds.
And step one for a lot of people is just actually update your LinkedIn profile in the first place. Even have a LinkedIn. Surprising, actually, the amount of people still not on LinkedIn in this industry. But I think that's the opportunity for the more savvy operators out there, right?
Yeah, and I would say that at the beginning, when I had no one interacting with my posts, I really did think that freight forwarders weren't there, like on LinkedIn at all. And at the beginning, I thought to myself, maybe I'm just wasting my time here, right? Just spending hours on content and learning how to do it and just
Mm.
obviously testing what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
But there is three, I would call it viral posts. And when I say viral, it's just that it got so many more likes than my average post. So for example, to give you context, my average post gets somewhere like 40, 60 likes, right, from people and like 5 to 10 comments. That's
Hmm.
average. It took time, but that's average now. So when a post gets over 100, 200, 300 likes and then comments, I call that a viral one, like a viral piece of content that I never thought that was going to become that monster. During these 14 months, I had three viral posts. One back in April last year, one in September, and one 2 days ago. You can go look at my profile and see it. And the amount of people in logistics liking that stuff and commenting on it, it was just a realization of mine. Like,
Mm.
people are here,
Yeah.
maybe not liking my stuff, maybe not interacting with it,
Yeah.
but they're here. So if you are here, why not, instead of consuming content, start creating content? Because your company will thank you for that in a few
Yeah.
months.
100%. The other important thing as well is rather than just likes and comments, for me personally, I always look at the impressions because that will tell me how many times my posts are actually showing up in people's feeds. And more often than not, it's probably a little bit different maybe for me in recruitment. People won't necessarily like things if I'm posting about jobs or whatever, because it's awkward for them, right? If they're employed and their boss sees it or whatever. But the
Right.
impression count is really high. And a lot of the times it's quite high relative to the likes and comments. So it's telling you that people are actually seeing it. And I know that because I'll be out at an event and I'll meet people and they'll mention something that I posted about, like my dog or, Fiona or whatever it is, like random stuff. So they're watching you as well. When you started posting like 14, 15 months ago, how long until you really were like, okay, this is starting to work now?
It's an interesting question because it has a funny answer. There was a few times throughout this time posting consistently that I thought that maybe it was a fluke, that I just went viral by chance, and that was just gonna never happen again. Because like I mentioned you, my average post goes from like 40 to 60 likes, but there's some posts that completely bombs. Like I get 5 to 10 likes and I'm like what happened to this? So one thing that I had to do at the very beginning for me to be able to continue posting content is just detaching myself from the performance of the pieces of content, like completely 100%. Because I would feel so bad when I spend 30, 40 minutes crafting a post and just thinking this is the best possible post that I could ever create. And then putting it online and just getting like maybe 2 to 3 likes. That was so
Yeah.
disappointing. Yeah. Like I will feel frustrated. So one thing that I had to do at the beginning, because there was a few moments that I thought, maybe this is not a good idea. I just kind of stop and just not do it. I had to just detach myself from the outcome. And instead of right now, the way that I see it, that I'm not posting to see how many people like my post. I now post as much as possible to see what works and what doesn't. And when I
Mm.
find the format that works best, I just double down on that. For example, a few months ago, I thought that maybe I was being too technical, right, on my posts, that I was just talking about email campaigns and LinkedIn and content and all the bad things that reporters are doing. And then all of a sudden, I was not really talking about me. And when I say me, I'm not saying that I have to only talk about me or that make LinkedIn as my diary. But the thing that every forwarder that wants to start on LinkedIn has to realize or has to understand that what you're doing on LinkedIn is building your personal brand. And personal brand has the word personal on it. So you have
Mm.
to be personal. And the things that people crave or that want to see are transformation, are people being vulnerable, people saying they made a mistake and they don't feel bad about just saying it online or on a post. That those are kinds of posts that people connect in a deeper level. because you are showing yourself as you are. You are not just putting this mask online and trying to make people think that you are the perfect freight forwarder and that you are not going to mess up any of the shipments that they do with you if they work with you. No, you're
Yeah.
showing yourself as you are, showing the things that you didn't do as well, all the mistakes that you did and that your team did or that you did with your team. Showing yourself as transparent as possible builds way more trust than maybe just having a good looking website or maybe
Yeah.
paying a graphic designer to craft a like a carousel or whatever. Just being personal, vulnerable, and showing yourself as you are goes a long way for sure.
Yeah. Being human and being relatable, I think, are two really important things rather than just focusing on the most polished and clinical post available. People just want to relate to other people at the end of the day. And then, like an example I did a few months ago now, I was on Instagram and I saw this reel from this automated port in China. I can't remember exactly where, in China somewhere. And it was like robots basically controlling the whole port and automatic containers and all this stuff. And I just found it pretty interesting. It was like a 10-second reel. So I downloaded it and reshared it on LinkedIn. The most viral post I've ever done, I think. It had like 180,000 impressions. It had like hundreds of comments, like 1,500 likes on it. And I had no thought. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And that's the algorithm can be a funny thing because, like you say, sometimes I'll really sit down, think of a post, craft it up, and I'll be like, oh, this is going to hit. And you post, and it's like 12 like minimal engagement. It can just be the most random thing. But I think the key thing is you have to be consistent, right? Because the algorithm rewards consistency. If you post once a month or once every few weeks, it doesn't like that.
Yeah, correct. And just to add to your idea, Alex Ramosi says that he doesn't believe in luck, but he believes in just doing the work that puts you in a position that luck finds you. So in this case with content, right, if you are just trying to crack the code with LinkedIn or just find the right format for you to go viral, it just doesn't work that way because you can't predict which post is going to go viral. But what you can predict is the consistency on your message, on your content. If you are consistent enough on posting 3 to 5 times every single week for a year, I can guarantee that you will have at least three viral posts that will be the posts that you never thought were going to go viral, but just because you kept
Yeah.
posting, luck found you. So that's the way that I.
I love that. That's great. And in terms of your sales methodology, you mentioned LinkedIn, obviously cold email. What can forwarders start to implement, now that can really transform and help shape their business heading into the rest of 2026? Like little things or little tweaks, apart from obviously getting on LinkedIn and posting content more from a sales point of view.
Good question. Just try to accept the fact that the way that they're doing things needs to change. You just got to start with that. Just, yeah, this is not working and it's not working for a reason, right? I got to find something else that could work, right? And in our case, and in the case of the clients that we work with, what works is trying to see the sale, which is a process, right? Not as a transaction, but as a relationship. And I think freight forwarders fall short on that because, and if it happened to you, I'm pretty sure that you get at least 3 to 5 LinkedIn messages every single week, just pitching services on the first message, right? On the first message, or you get emails just saying all the good things about the company, but nothing about you and your
Yeah.
potential problem. So I think the script needs to change, right? I want my lead or my prospect to feel that I'm interested in helping them, right? And how do I do that? Not copying and pasting the same message for 100 people. Is
Mm.
just taking the time, 3 minutes or even less, to go into the website, go into the LinkedIn profile, and find a piece of information that can be valuable and relevant in my message. And again, not sell on the first message. I would say that's something that needs to change because all the things evolve, right? And
Mm,
I would say that it's something that, like you mentioned earlier, that maybe that worked a few years ago, but it doesn't work anymore, right? If you receive a message that is a pitch on the first message, maybe a few years ago it did work, and that actually opened up a conversation that
mm,
ended up in a business relationship. But nowadays it doesn't. They see you as a spammer. They see you as someone that it's not adding any kind of value, but just wants business. So I would say freight forwarders, the things that they got to do is just take a bit of time to do a little research on the prospect and just say something valuable. And if you do that, you're going to be just in the top 1% because no one's doing it just by doing that
yeah.
small change.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think the other thing that is important as well is providing so much value, right, to your audience. And you're an example where you're posting really interesting things, right? Whether it's about freight forwarding or certain sales processes or little actionable tips that people can take away. You're providing tons and tons of value. And like for me, this is going back like 10 years. I used to follow Gary Vee a lot back in the day, and his whole thing was
Follow
like
him,
jab,
yeah.
jab, right hook, right?
Hmm.
Provide value, 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 then ask for the sale. But don't ask for the sale unless you've provided a ton of value. And I think that makes a lot of sense because the amount of cold emails and LinkedIn messages I get, and they're starting to ramp up, I'm noticing at the moment, they're just completely irrelevant. They have no relevance to my business whatsoever. I'm guessing they're all AI automated. The email addresses are really weird, like strange. And I just report spam block straight away. Like it doesn't make sense. So I think if you do a bit of research, spend a bit of time on like who your prospect is. If it's LinkedIn, you connect with them. The worst thing to do is try and sell straight away. It literally, no one likes it, right? Build that relationship, build that trust, interact with the content, and then down the track, you might have that opportunity. But you got to build that relationship.
Definitely. And one tip, quick tip that I can give freight forwarders is that first, there's so many things that you can automate on freight forwarding, but do not automate your LinkedIn messages.
Yeah.
Just for the love of God, just don't.
Yeah.
And one quick tip, because right now every other prospect is right now in defensive mode, right? Because you just receive so many pitch laps every single day. So one thing that you can do is just instead of sending a message of 3 lines, just send 3 messages on different lines. So you say, "Hey Sam, send. How are you today? Send. How are things in Australia? How you been? How's it going? How was your end of the year?" So the fact that you send 3 messages, maybe for you is irrelevant, but for the prospect, it's a signal that is not an automated message, that is a real human being on the other side. And
Mm.
that alone can open up the possibility for them to respond back. And then you open the conversation. Obviously, you're not going to pitch lap on the second message.
Yeah.
Maybe after a few interactions, the trust is built, and then you can ask, but never
Yeah.
automating. Just, yeah.
That's a great tip. Yeah, very good. And I think you might have just answered this actually just then, but what are you seeing as one of the biggest mistakes that forwarders are making when it comes to sales in general?
When it comes to sales, they think that they are entitled of the prospect's business because the years of experience, the licenses, the communication, the great services, all of the things that the prospect really doesn't care about at all. Like, I don't care, right? That is one thing. If you're gonna try to convince me with that, you already like you are out of the race and you don't even know it. Like you don't even know it. So that's one thing that needs to change. And the other thing about sales that also needs to change is that they have to understand that if the competitive advantage that you are trying to sell me on is price, the only thing you're going to be judged is by price. So, with that in mind, or with that idea, if I want a container to move from Australia to the United States and I send the quote to 10 people and I receive 10 proposals, and then I know nothing about these companies, guess what's the only thing that I will get my decision from? Price. That's the
Yeah.
only thing. And if in your message or if in the interactions that we had, prior to me sending you the request, you only talk about how cheap you are or how good your rates are, like you are already at a disadvantage. And again, it's just the way that it's been done, but it needs to change. The better or the best way to do it is you to take the time and ask questions. Some people think that the best salespeople are the ones that just don't stop talking, and I think they're wrong. The best salespeople are the ones that ask the right questions. Because if you ask the right questions and then you tell me what's bothering you, what your problems are, then I have so many threads to pull from. Now I know your pain points. Now I know what angle I'm going to use to now using this conversation. But if I know
Mm.
nothing about you and I'm only trying to sell my good rates and my years of experience and my good communication, that's not going to sell. And that needs to
Yeah,
change.
that's a really good point. I agree as well, because I learned early on in my sales career, it's like two ears, one mouth. Use it in that order. And the more that your client or prospect is talking, the more information you can gather. And the more information you can gather, the much better chance you're going to have at actually closing that deal or getting that sale. So totally, totally agree.
And something else before, sorry to interrupt, but something else is that freight forwarders, they don't evaluate their sales team. I guarantee you they're not. They're just not evaluating the sales calls, the messages they send. They're only measuring the team by how much revenue they're bringing to the company. But there's so many pieces, moving pieces that happens before the shipment, right? And on the lead generation side, how you speak, what you say, how you say it, right, are things that needs to be evaluated more. And why do I say that? Because I get calls from like freight brokers or like freight forwarders like every day, and that is
Mm.
one of the reasons why I usually don't pick up my phone, because I know it's someone trying to sell me a service, or
Yeah,
it's a call, but not a good
yeah,
call. It's a bad call. So
yeah.
sometimes I just listen to them, and the way that they speak is like, do you have cargo that we can move? And sometimes I do answer the calls, and I ask him, why should I work with you?
Mm.
And then they say, oh, because we have nationwide coverage and good rates. And I'm like, yeah, but so does every other people that call me every day. Like, what's the differentiator? Like
Yeah,
something that you can offer me that your
yeah,
competition can't. Like, can you
yeah.
name a few things? And they can't. And why they
Mm.
can't? They're repeating the same thing to everybody and expecting different results. And that's just not going to happen. So if you're a freight forwarder or a sales director or manager, evaluate your calls, the teams that the calls that your team make, evaluate the script, and evaluate the way they articulate the message. Because at the end of the day, it's the presentation that they're giving of your company. So it's not good, right? That is the impression that the people are going to get from your company. And obviously, I wouldn't
Yeah,
think you want. So yeah, definitely
yeah.
evaluate your team's calls and messages and everything related to that.
That's great. I love that. And just kind of, I guess, heading into sort of wrapping up, what is your view in terms of the next few years? If you had a crystal ball and you could kind of predict the future, like where do you see the freight forwarding market evolving? Whether it's like a customer is going to become more savvy, and is AI and automation going to play a big part moving forward? Or like, what's your view, I guess, on the next few years in this market?
So digital transformation, it's something that if you're not looking into it, you should. Like if you're not doing something related to AI for your business, like you're already behind, like a few years behind, but that's okay. Like you got
Yeah,
time, like, no worries. But the things that you can do with AI today are just crazy. And I'm not talking ChatGPT, Claude, and I'm not talking content. Like I'm talking automation of messages, of updates, talking AI agents that work on documentation, that pretty much does all the heavy lifting of your operations team so they can invest their time on something like more valuable or that brings more revenue to the company. And again, with the sales team as well, if you have a sales team of 5 people and they spend 50 to 75% of their time manually looking for people to talk to, like you are like you're burning cash. Like that's the
yeah,
reality of it. You need to use some kind of automations to get new conversations without even worrying about, oh, how many people did we contact this week? Like that's something that needs to happen on autopilot. And your sales team, they have to be good enough that they only focusing on closing those leads, not looking for those leads.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think that, yeah, AI it's a tool to be more efficient at the end of the day as well. And the good operators and the good salespeople are using it kind of like an assistant to help them, right? Like you say, do a lot of the admin heavy tasks or the data intensive tasks to free up their time to actually go and meet with customers and build those relationships, which AI is not going to do. So that's great. Any other points that you wanted to cover off or chat about?
Just encourage free forwarders to use LinkedIn more. Remember the crazy statistic that I threw a few minutes ago? 80% of B2B leads are found on LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you should, because great things can happen. Like, for example, my case, I'm in Sam's podcast today, and I never thought that I would be interviewed by a logistics professional from the other side of the world. So those are the things that can happen if you're active on LinkedIn. So definitely start using it a lot more.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to wrap up. So, Jose, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I certainly will take away some actionable insights, and hopefully our audience can as well. So, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sam, for having me. It was a pleasure, and I'll catch you guys soon.